Today's conversation is sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you want to learn more about how to make your 9 to 5 optional, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising. Can you imagine a life where you're literally going into your job every day because you want to, not because you have to, not because there are bills to pay, not because there are mouths to feed, not because you have to make more payments, you have to get ready and prepare for the next thing, but you're literally going to your job because you want to. Yeah. Well, you know what? It seems sometimes really far fetched until you get really crystal clear on what is it that you want to be doing with your life? How can you best leverage the assets that are around you? And what is it that can give you fulfillment on a daily basis? Right. So if I think about what happened in my life and I go back to, I'm early father, 44 years old. I just closed this amazing $25 million equivalent deal. Did it in a different language, in a different culture. And it was also at the same time that things were going really, really well at the job. Things were stressful at the house. I still had a lot of the desire to be the reliable one, the one who was providing for the family. And at the same time, I knew that there was something inside that wanted more, that the job was great, but there's also this path that I knew that I would be able to take and provide more for myself, for my family. And this was also a time when you start to realize that your thinking can even start to change, right? Because my thinking started changing. I'd always thought, because I was always taught, that in order to leave corporate, in order to retire, you needed millions of dollars in the bank. You needed 4 million, 5 million. You could live off of that at X% of interest for the rest of your life. Well, at this point in my life, like I said, in my early 40s, started realizing that I didn't actually need to make millions and millions of dollars. It's not about you making millions and millions of dollars. It's about you getting to a point where you can say, what is it that I spend on a monthly basis? And what is it that I can do to actually cover those expenses? And that was the moment in time when my mindset started to change. It wasn't about how much money could I store in the bank. It was, what are my expenses and what could I do to cover those monthly expenses? Now, don't get me wrong, there's always this part where you want to continue to rise up the corporate ladder. And I was definitely there. I chose to continue to rise up the corporate ladder until about this point in my life. And then it was more about, how can I provide the level of security for my family? I was thinking about the things that were most important to me at that point in life were now starting to change and be more related to um, the overall security of my family. Started having some early on successes, and when I think about this massive deal, right? Because it was $25 million that I closed, led this team of people that were amazing experts, and this was in literally September, in September of the year, so it was a Q3. And so what I realized and what I remembered was, oh man, this is absolutely amazing. I'm going to do well over 200 and almost probably 300% of my target. Um, and at the same time, that was this massive success that you feel. And in the back of my mind, I also thought, wow, in 3 months, this starts all over again. So you go from doing 3 digits over, like, doing more than almost 300% of your quota, meaning the annual amount of money that I had to bring into the company. But I knew in 3 months, I was going to go from hero back to zero, because everyone starts over at the beginning of the year. And it's one of those things that is the most deflating feelings that you can ever have, but it's just part of it, living in a sales leadership world. So I knew that the January 1st of the next year, everything was going to reset and was going to start all over. And so I realized, like, this is the moment, like, not right now is absolutely when I have to take advantage of this situation, because I knew that there was going to be a lot of money going into my bank account because of the sales quota. But what I realized was also too that this was the moment in time. Like, this was, I'd started having some early success in my side hustle. I knew that things were working in the right direction, but I made two very strategic decisions that were going to accelerate me being able to make my 9 to 5 optional, right? Because that's what we want to talk about today, is the truth about what make your 9 to 5 optional really means. And so the two strategic things that I did were number one, I decided that I was having early success. Things were working properly in my side hustle. I started investing in real estate and some other things that were tangible assets that were kicking off cash every month. And there was so much cash that I didn't actually know how to manage it. Like it was a really first world problem because there was so much money coming in, but I didn't have the right structure in place. And so I was exhausted because I was spending more time mentally and physically on my side hustle, which was like the thing that was supposed to be like a nice to have, than I was actually in the job where I was making this massive sales and leading teams of people. And so I realized that it was about how do I invest in myself to figure out and get the tools and the insights from someone who's already been there before me so that I could stop being exhausted all the time. So that's exactly what I did. That was number one. I decided I was going to make a strategic bet on myself. I invested almost six figures for a 1 year coaching program. And it was so much that it scared me. It scared me to actually make that investment. But I knew that the best return on the investment was going to be in myself. So I came outside of my comfort zone. I was scared, but I guess what? Every single coaching call, I was ready. I was absolutely ready. But that was the first strategic thing. The second strategic thing was I realized that I was something known as an accredited investor, and that I didn't have to continue to put every single moment into a return. Like a return on my time was a return on currency or money that I'd placed in investment. I realized that I could actually place my capital with other people. So as an accredited investor, I decided that I wanted to also start to include more assets into my personal portfolio. And so I wanted to include more assets into my portfolio. And I wanted to do that as someone who was investing passively, so not being taking an active management. So those were the two things that I decided I wanted to do. Now, also with those two things, there was number one, there was a massive outflux of currency that left my bank account. So that was not a good feeling because it wasn't like this delay, the immediate gratification where I was going to get a return on that. It would happen over time, number one, and then number two, I didn't have as much control anymore. And so these made me really feel uneasy. This massive outflux of cash that went in because I was investing in myself, and secondly, that I was investing with other people and I didn't have the control that I was actually looking for. But what that did was, including the so when we start talking about the truth about what is it, when I talk about what is make your 9 to 5 optional, the thing that happened was, yeah, it was the great part is was able to get to the number of doors that I thought that I needed to set myself free. But it was the change of the mentality, which was, okay, I didn't need the millions and millions of dollars in the bank. It was, how do I cover the amount of money that my family and I are spending every month and replace that through the investments, through my portfolio, and doing that consistently because of the cash flow that was coming in. So was able to get to the goal, right? Was to get to the number of doors that I wanted to do. But more importantly, and this is the power of the truth of, like, when I talk about make your 9 to 5 optional, what does it really mean? Because a lot of times you may listen and you may think, well, that means quit your day job. It means leave your corporate job. And it does not mean that. It absolutely does not mean that. Make your 9 to 5 optional means that you understand that your job and your big corporate cushy role gives you lots of amazing benefits. And if it makes sense for you and your family to continue to go to the job like I did for 4 years when I didn't have to, then you can keep doing that, because the return for yourself, for your family, and for the company that you're working for, it makes sense. So keep doing it. That's what make your 9 to 5 optional means. It doesn't mean quit your job. It means you have the option to continue to go into your job because you want to. When I did that, right, like a couple of things that happened. Number one, I was going to work at my job for my own free will. So guess what? I went to work happy. I was like the happy corporate employee. I used to put that on my LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn moniker. And by the way, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, go check out on LinkedIn and let's connect, and make sure you say, hey, Billy, we'll listen to the podcast and all that kind of stuff. But number one, I went to work of my own free will. I was really happy to do it. I wasn't thinking about I had to pay all these extra bills. I went happy. And I know that I appreciated that. And I'm sure that my coworkers did. I was an excellent employee. I was able to support other managers because I came from a management and leadership roles. And so I understood the leadership that was what they needed. And so as a direct line employee, an individual contributor, as you like to call it in the corporate world, I was contributing all the time. And I was helping. I was bringing the insights from a leadership role, from a management role. And also too, and I think about this all the time, like the annual review process, which is usually something that I used to early on in my career, I used to get so frustrated because I was like, they're never going to pay me what I'm worth. And I think I've talked about this in a previous episode, but guess what? You're never going to get paid what you think you're worth in a corporate role because the role is only worth so much. But that's a whole different thing. And I have an amazing mentor and friend who helped me to understand that a long time ago. But like being able to move towards those goals, being able to have someone that helped me take guided action that was there for me, that also helped give me much more confidence so that I could continue to be a reliable person for my family. That's what it was all about. And so it wasn't just about being able to get the doors and do that in the time. It was the fact that I bet on myself, made some strategic bets. And I say strategic bets because I invested in myself, number one, and invested in more assets to bring into the portfolio. But it gave me a job satisfaction. I was a great employee with my colleagues, a better employee. I mean, I was even in the Catalyst program or the top talent program when I didn't even need to go into my job. So when I say and we talk about make your 9 to 5 optional, what it really means is for you to have the freedom to choose the option to continue to stay in your 9 to 5 because it makes sense for you, for your family, and your employer. Or the day that you decide it doesn't make sense for you anymore, guess what? You exit stage left. And it's as simple as that. Your employer's happy because you've been a great employee for the time that you've been there. And then when you think it makes sense, you have the freedom and the option to choose to exit stage left. But you can't just do that if you don't have a plan B. If you don't have another plan, if you're not working on a side hustle, if you're not working on something else, it makes it really difficult because then you're going to consistently have this relationship where you have to have your job. And I spent a really long time in my corporate career when I was in that, and I was not even aware that that was the dynamic that was happening. And so because I was able to also experience what it's like to go into a job because you want to, not because you have to, I want to help you experience that exact same thing. Right. So when we talk about what is making your 9 to 5 optional, what does it really mean? It means you have the freedom to choose. You have the option to go into your job or to not. Okay. And so that's what it all means. And that's why I wanted to just have this episode. I wanted you to understand that it's not about quitting your job. It's about making your 9 to 5 optional. And so if this sounds like a path that you want to take, or if you've been through any like struggles or frustrations because you just like you're exhausted because you see that it's there, but you either don't know where to start or you're having you're getting crushed because of the success you're having, you know where to find me. It's not difficult. I think it's Deion Sanders. He said, "I ain't hard to find." So I like to believe that I ain't hard to find. You can find me here. Also, if you know of somebody who needs to hear today's episode, share it with them. It's really simple. Share it. More importantly, talk to them about what you've heard here. Is it about you taking action and needing to invest in yourself, make the bet on yourself? Is it about you being able to bring more assets into your portfolio? Is it about surrounding yourself with the right people? You don't know how to get started. You need some help. Well, you know what? Take this episode. Listen, there's things that I've done that I've shared with you that you can very easily put into practice. Create a plan for yourself. Make the plan that is maybe moving away from thinking that you need millions in the bank to focusing on, okay, how much money am I spending every month? How much do you spend every month? Can you make enough investments or create something for someone else that they're willing to pay you to cover the expenses that you and your family have? Well, if that happens, then guess what? Your 9 to 5 has just become optional. And that is the truth about what it means to make your 9 to 5 optional. It doesn't mean quit your job. It doesn't mean that you've got to do something else. It just means you have the option to choose. So while you're thinking about this, while you're taking action, most importantly, I'll be here preparing for the next episode. So until then, go ahead and make it a great day. Thank you very much. Today's conversation was sponsored by the Billy Keels Advisory Program. If you're looking to make your 9 to 5 optional and need some help, just go to billykeels.com/advising. Once again, that's billykeels.com/advising.